When Princess Diana died in 1997, strangers wept in the streets of London. They brought flowers, teddy bears, handwritten notes. They camped outside Kensington Palace for days, mourning someone they'd never met. The media called it unprecedented. But it wasn't. We'd done this exact same thing before, with the exact same rituals, the exact same public theatre of grief. 136 years earlier. And the person who helped establish many of the patterns we still follow wasn't a celebrity at all. She was Queen Victoria, and she helped create a blueprint that influences how we experience every viral death, every public funeral, every moment when the world stops to grieve together. Hi guys, I'm Monty and I'm a linguist and a history enthusiast. I create videos that give you a new perspective on modern concepts. If you learned something from this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel to help me grow and create more of this kind of content. And let me know in the comments what you'd like to see me talk about in my next video. Here's what most people know about Victorian mourning. It was elaborate, it was black, and it lasted forever. Queen Victoria wore mourning clothes for 40 years after Prince Albert died, though she did gradually lighten her dress over time. But here's what they don't tell you. Victoria didn't just change how people dressed for death, she transformed something that already existed. She turned private grief into public spectacle, made mourning into cultural performance. And in doing so, she created the template for how we consume celebrity death today. Every time social media explodes over a famous person's passing, every time we share tribute posts for someone we've never met, every time we turn death into content, we're following patterns that crystallized around 1861. The Victorians didn't just have elaborate mourning rituals, they had the first modern celebrity death cult. And understanding how they created it explains why we can't stop clicking on celebrity obituaries, why we live stream funerals, and why grief became something we perform for an audience. December 14th, 1861, Prince Albert dies of typhoid fever at Windsor Castle. Within hours, Queen Victoria makes a decision that will reshape Western culture for the next century and a half. She doesn't just mourn privately, she mourns publicly, dramatically, and permanently. She orders that Albert's room be kept exactly as he left it, his clothes laid out fresh each morning, his shaving water changed daily, for 40 years. But here's the detail that changes everything. She makes sure everyone knows about it. Victoria doesn't retreat from public life to grieve. She transforms public life into an extension of her grief. Every appearance becomes a performance of mourning. Every photograph becomes a meditation on loss. She turns her personal tragedy into a national identity. Over the following years, something remarkable happens. The entire British Empire begins copying her grief rituals. Not because they're mourning Albert, but because they're mourning with Victoria. They're participating in her emotional experience. Sound familiar? It should. This is exactly what happens when a beloved celebrity dies today. We don't mourn the person, we mourn alongside the people who actually knew them. The Victorians developed what we might call proxy mourning. The idea that you could genuinely grieve for someone you'd never met by participating in the grief of someone who had. Victoria became one of the world's most influential public mourners, and the public became her audience. But Victoria was smart about this. She understood something that modern celebrities and their publicists are still figuring out. Authenticity sells. Her grief wasn't performed, it was real, and that realness made it irresistible to consume. People bought mourning jewelry not because they were sad about Albert, but because they wanted to participate in Victoria's authentic sadness. This is where it gets interesting. The Victorians didn't just copy Victoria's mourning clothes, they copied her mourning schedule. The elaborate timeline she created, 2 years of deep mourning followed by gradual lightening of dress, became the standard template. But here's what's fascinating. Most people following this schedule weren't mourning anyone specific. They were mourning the concept of mourning. They were participating in grief as a cultural experience. The mourning industry exploded. By 1870, you could buy mourning clothes, mourning jewelry, mourning stationery, mourning tea sets, even mourning handkerchiefs with pre-printed tear stains. Grief became a consumer category. Department stores had entire mourning sections. Magazines published mourning fashion guides. The Victorians industrialized sorrow. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. The Victorians didn't just commercialize grief, they weaponized it. Mourning became a way to signal virtue, status, and social compliance all at once. The more elaborate your mourning, the more moral you appeared. The longer you grieved, the more respectable you became. Grief became performance art with social consequences. Women bore the brunt of this. A Victorian widow was expected to mourn for 2 years minimum. But here's the catch. She was also expected to be visible while mourning. She couldn't just stay home and grieve privately. She had to attend social functions, church services, family gatherings, all while wearing her grief like a costume. Her mourning had to be witnessed to count. This created something new in human history: professional grief. Women became full-time mourners, and their mourning became entertainment for others. People would attend social functions specifically to observe the mourners. Grief became a spectator sport. The parallel to modern celebrity culture is exact. When a celebrity dies, we don't just consume news about their death. We consume content about other people's reactions to their death. We watch tribute videos, reaction videos, videos of people watching tribute videos. The grief becomes the product, and we become the consumers. But the Victorians took this further than we do. They created grief tourism. People would travel to see famous mourning sites. They'd visit the homes of famous mourners. They'd attend funerals of people they'd never met just to witness the spectacle. Death became a destination. The most disturbing example? Post-mortem photography. The Victorians would hire photographers to take pictures of dead family members, often posed to look alive. But these weren't just private keepsakes, they were social currency. Families would display these photographs in their parlours, share them with visitors, even publish them in newspapers if the deceased was notable enough. This is where Victorian mourning culture reveals its true innovation. They turned death into content. Every funeral became a production. Every memorial became a performance. Every grave became a set piece. They created the first death industrial complex. And they exported it globally. British mourning customs spread through the empire and beyond. American department stores copied British mourning fashions. European royalty copied Victoria's mourning protocols. By 1880, half the world was following a grief template created by one woman's response to one death. The psychological impact was profound. An entire generation grew up believing that proper grief required an audience, that private sorrow was somehow insufficient, that mourning wasn't real unless it was witnessed, documented, and consumed by others. Here's the connection most people miss. Victorian mourning culture didn't disappear, it evolved. It became celebrity death culture. Every element of modern celebrity mourning, from tribute concerts to memorial merchandise to grief tourism, has its roots in Victorian mourning practices. Consider Princess Diana's funeral in 1997. 2 billion people watched it on television. The route was lined with flowers exactly like Victorian funeral processions. People camped out for days to witness it, exactly like Victorian grief tourism. The media coverage lasted for weeks, exactly like Victorian mourning periods. Even the merchandise, the commemorative plates and memorial books, followed Victorian mourning commerce patterns established 130 years earlier. But here's what's really disturbing. We've made Victorian mourning culture more efficient. The Victorians had to wait for newspapers to report on deaths. We get push notifications. They had to travel to mourning sites. We have live-streamed funerals. They had mourning jewelry. We have memorial hashtags. We've digitized grief and made it instantaneous. Social media has turned everyone into a professional mourner. When a celebrity dies, our feeds fill with tribute posts from people who've never met them. We perform grief for our followers, who perform grief for their followers. The Victorian mourning chain has become a mourning network, and we're all participants. The economics are identical too. Victorian mourning was a massive industry. Modern celebrity death is equally profitable. Tribute albums, memorial documentaries, biography sales, even tourism to death sites. When David Bowie died, his album sales increased by 5,000%. When Prince died, Paisley Park became a pilgrimage destination. We've turned celebrity death into a renewable resource. But the most profound parallel is this. Both Victorian mourning and modern celebrity grief culture serve the same psychological function. They allow us to practice grief safely, to experience loss without actual loss, to feel deep emotion without personal risk. The Victorians mourned Albert to rehearse for their own inevitable losses. We mourn celebrities for the same reason. The difference is scale and speed. Victorian mourning culture took decades to develop and spread. Celebrity death culture happens in real time, globally, simultaneously. A celebrity dies in Los Angeles, and within minutes, people in Tokyo are posting tributes. The Victorian mourning network has become a mourning internet. And just like Victorian mourning, modern celebrity grief has rules. There are correct ways to mourn publicly and incorrect ways. There are time limits on how long tribute posts are appropriate. There are social consequences for mourning the wrong celebrities, or mourning the right celebrities incorrectly. We've recreated the Victorian mourning police in digital form. The next time you see social media explode over a celebrity death, remember, you're not witnessing something new. You're watching a ritual that's been refined over 160 years. Queen Victoria taught us that grief could be public, that mourning could be entertainment, and that death could be profitable. We've just made her system faster and more global. The question isn't whether this is healthy or unhealthy. The Victorians asked the same question and never found an answer. The question is whether we're conscious participants in this system or unconscious ones. Because once you see the pattern, once you understand that celebrity mourning is performance art with Victorian roots, you can choose how to participate, or whether to participate at all. Victoria spent 40 years mourning one man she actually knew. We spend our lives mourning strangers we never met. The efficiency is impressive. But sometimes I wonder if we've optimized the wrong thing.